Hi everyone and welcome to this lesson on A Christmas Carol. In this lesson we're going to be looking at change and redemption. So redemption means for Scrooge to basically fix the mistakes of his past as he gets through to the end of the story and make sure that he's become a fully rounded and better person as a result. Okay, so some reminders for your work here. You need to make sure you're using comment, evidence and development. Comment is telling the story using your own words and synonyms, lots of detail where you can. Using evidence to back up what you're saying, so the key quotes that you've learned from the front of your booklets, and then development needs to be talking about the writer, the themes, the messages, and the ideas which Dickens wants us to consider as readers. All right. On to your steps. Now, I've put some of these on the left-hand side of the video because this will disappear off as we go through. Make sure, first of all, you figure out roughly where the extract is from. Then you want to pick out some areas of the extract to talk about. 2 or 3 is fine. You can do more if you want to, but make sure that you've done this within 15 minutes because you've got 45 minutes on this question and you need to save 30 minutes to talk about the whole text. So then you think of 5 areas in the rest of the text that link to change and redemption, ideally something from each of the 5 staves. Then you're going to spend 25 to 30 minutes writing them up before doing a very quick conclusion to end the essay, which focuses on the writer's intention. All right, so there's your extract. So you want to pause the video now and have a look at figuring out where this extract is from and thinking of which areas that you could pick and talk about. Okay, so pause the video and do that now. Okay, if you've done that, so obviously this one here, we're looking at the Cratchits, we're looking at stave 3, and it's when we're looking at the Cratchit Christmas. So basically you want to think about some of the things which happen within the Cratchit Christmas that prompt Scrooge into changing and eventually redeeming himself. Okay, so you could pick out something from the start, such as the custard cup without a handle, fairly obvious link towards the poverty of the family. You could also pick out something here towards their celebration of Christmas, maybe the famous line from Tiny Tim. And then clearly the most important line in this one is that, Scrooge asking about if Tiny Tim will live, or seeing a vacant seat, or saying he will be spared. Okay, so these are Scrooge really begging for his chance to change, and then the ghost, quotes Scrooge's own words from stave 1 back at him. Okay, now could you mention all of those things that I've just mentioned within 15 minutes? Probably not. It's going to be very difficult to. So it's about being selective and picking out the things that you think you could really explain well. Okay. So then you would write them up. So in this extract, which is taken from stave 3, Scrooge witnesses the Cratchits celebrating Christmas. So you can see here my story, my first little comment bit there, even though they don't have very much, is then embedded in with quotation. God saying, "God bless us," and Tiny Tim echoing, "God bless us everyone." He's seeing what they does not have, a happy family sharing in the spirit of Christmas. So this is beginning to activate that, that need for change within him. Then I pick out another one. Scrooge then starts to feel really sorry for Tiny Tim and to care about his future, asking. Now, if you want to work along with me, you can complete that one there. You can obviously change it to some quotes of your own. You don't have to do the ones that I've done here. And you would ask some appropriate questions to get some decent development and discussion in the end of the point that you're making here. Then pick something else out from near the bottom. So it could be when Scrooge is, the words that are used against him. It could be him realizing, that he needs to change, etc. Okay, so if you want to pause and have a go at writing up your response to the extract using the help there. Okay, and if you've managed that, you should now be on to looking at the wider text. So change and redemption in the wider text. I'm using them interchangeably here, but obviously they mean very similar things. Redemption is the kind of end result, the end stage of the change. So now you want to plan 5 areas from the rest of the text. So not the Cratchit Christmas in stave 3, pick something else from stave 3, and I want you to write down some things from each of the staves. You can write down more than one in some staves, that's fine, but you need to make sure you've got that coverage across the text. So write down 5 things which show change and redemption or a lack of change and redemption. Okay, if you've done that, these are some of the things you might want to consider. I'm not saying you have to have done these, and clearly you can do some of them and not others, but if you've mentioned at least some of these, then you're probably on the right track. So again, pause the video and compare your plan to the one that I've done here. Okay, so then you want to be writing up something from stave 1, first of all, because even though the extract's in stave 3, you want to go back to the beginning and tell that story. Okay, so at the start, we see how Scrooge was disconnected from society. He doesn't allow Bob to have, I'll let you fill that in. He believes certain things about Christmas, and I'm sure you can remember some quotes to do with that. He also refuses to donate to certain people for certain things. So again, try and use some of those key quotes that you've been taught in school. Good discussions to be having at this point are about him symbolising certain aspects of society, his selfishness, what Dickens is trying to show about that. Clearly, Dickens doesn't want us to be that way. He's trying to show it, as the problems within society. Now, you might also want to connect in some areas of Jacob Marley from towards the end of stave 1 here as well. That's perfectly fine, all right? But have a look at doing your version of stave 1. Start off by telling the story, get lots of references in there, and then as you end, be focusing a lot about writer and theme and message. Okay, here's an example of a completed one. I don't speak about Marley in this one, but you could do and add that as another area to talk about. So you can see here, in terms of the development, I've started talking a lot about the problems of poverty, which obviously Dickens is trying to call attention to, the fact he symbolises the selfish rich, and I've even recalled a little bit of context to do with Thomas Malthus and the inspiration for Scrooge here. So some of the comments are relating to the stealing of wealth, Christmas being a humbug, not allowing Bob to heat the office, or not allowing him to initially have Christmas Day off and then wanting him to be back early the next day, all that kind of thing. Okay. Area 2. All right, so this depends on what you've done for this. So you stave 2, think of the areas from his past that we're talking about, and you want to be writing up some of those. So I've tried to connect it back to Marley at the start to show him transitioning from stave 1 to stave 2. But then you want to be picking out those memories from his past. So perhaps when he's a lonely boy at school, when he's with Fezziwig, when Belle breaks up with him, his fiancée, and you want to be talking about what the message of all of this is. So what's the point of going back to the past? It's to show the reason why Scrooge is the way that he is. The reason he came to be, the reason why he's so bitter and selfish in stave 1 is because of his experiences from the past. People have, left him, abandoned him, hurt him, and Scrooge is kind of withdrawn into that oyster-like shell. Okay, it's a form of self-preservation and protection. So when you get towards the end of the stave, you might want to also consider the idea of the ghost and the light of the ghost. Scrooge tries to cover it up. So think about what that light may represent and why he's desperate to cover it up. Okay, so again, you don't have to do all of these, but have a go at your key area 2 now, and then pause and come back to it. Okay, if you've done that one, you want to be on to stave 3. Now, clearly in stave 3, if you've done the Cratchit Christmas, one of the main areas to talk about is ignorance and one. And you can spend quite a lot of time, mentioning that there. You can also mention some of the stuff from Fred's party and how they played the game and Scrooge is mocked, etc. There's lots of things that show Scrooge's change here. The idea of plenty at the start and the plenty of the rich versus the poverty of the poor. There's lots of things you can mention, but basically, stave 3 is really pushing Scrooge, as a turning point. Even when seeing things like the miners and stuff like that as well. So again, you want to pause this and have a go at completing your stave 3 write-up. Once you've done that, you're on to stave 4. So don't forget, this is a potential future. The Ghost of Christmas yet to come. This hasn't happened yet, but it will happen if Scrooge continues the way that he is. It's also really important to know that Scrooge doesn't realise the person's death he's shown at the start is his own. That's why I've used the word someone's here. So just think carefully about how you word this. There's lots of areas in this where you can talk about Scrooge's, prompts into changing. There's the way that they only come to his funeral if there's food provided. There's Caroline and her husband who are indebted to Scrooge, and they get a brief kind of reprieve and bit of breathing space from their loan that they owe him, because obviously Scrooge is a money lender. You've got Mrs. Dilben, the charwoman. You've got them taking the clothes and the bed curtains from when he's died, and then clearly you've got the famous bit at the end where we're talking about Scrooge begging in front of the gravestone, realising that this is all about him and desperate for a chance to change. I've put lots of different quotes on here for you to do this one, but let's help with the comment and with the discussion and development towards the bottom. Okay, so have a go at doing that one yourself. Once you've done that, stave 5. Scrooge is now transformed and changed. It's important you use the word redemption and redeeming himself by doing certain acts. So I've listed a lot of them at the top. He buys the turkey, he donates to charity, he raises Bob's salary, he attends Fred's party for Christmas. Okay, he's doing all the things which he refused to do before, and these acts of redemption are out of guilt and regret. He doesn't want to be seen as the person he was in stave 1. So any contrast you can make back with stave 1 in his attitude, his way of speaking, his manner, it is great. There's a few quotes that I've listed down in here, but just make sure you are talking about the idea of redemption. redemption and change. He is cleansing himself of his past sins. You could even link it to Marley. Marley's covered in chains at the start, and those chains represent each one of his past sins. Scrooge has his own invisible chains which surround him at this point and are dragging him down, and he's trying to metaphorically break free from those chains. Okay? When you get to the end, your final sentence wants to talk about Dickens' message. Why does he do all of this? What's the overall point, the kind of moral of the story, if you like? And make sure you end on that for your final point within your essay. The last thing you might want to consider as a point of revision is thinking about other questions. So clearly, this is the question of redemption and change. And roughly, that's kind of like what we've written up in chronological order there. Consider these questions. An essay on poverty or family or the ghosts or Christmas. I want you to now think about how you would modify your change essay and what things you would mention within these other essays, and plan this out as a grid. Because basically you want to use your redemption and change essay as your default that you start with, and then consider how you would change it if the question changed. Now in the future you may want to write up each of these essays to do as a practice, but certainly as a start it's worth considering how you would adapt and plan your original default essay to account for a slightly different question, which obviously would also come with a different extract as well. Okay, that's it for this lesson. Hope you found it useful, and make sure you try and focus on learning your default change and redemption essay, because that's the best way to prepare for the exam, knowing what you're going to start with and adapting with whatever comes up on the question in the real thing.